The first part of the Wrestling Observer for December 27th was that they went over the attendance figures for all the major companies for 2019, and they said it's a combination of it being a bad year for WWE and a good year for UFC, but it's the first year in history that UFC had more shows with more than 10,000 people attending than WWE. And not only that, but UFC had 32 of its 42 total shows over 10,000, where, according to records compiled by wrestling reporter Matt Farmer, WWE only had 18 events with over 10,000 fans this year. So WWE had 18 events over 10,000, UFC had 32. So there you go. Anthony Shabbat on here says he was at the MSG event last night. How was that one attended? Was it full? I haven't heard any results from that yet. CMLL, the Mexican company that runs weekly events at Arena Mexico, also had 18 shows over 10,000 fans. All of those shows were at Arena Mexico, so they're actually tied with WWE. Anthony Shabbat says the MSG Christmas WWE show was well attended. So that's no surprise there. Every year they do a house show, Christmas at MSG. That's well attended. Now, the live attendance in the WWE this past year was not worse than it was around the year 1994. That was probably their worst year in recent history. In other attendance news, I guess that year in 1994, WWE averaged 2,800 fans and WCW averaged 1,620 fans, whereas WWE actually averaged 5,000 fans per show over the first 9 months of this year, but the total average is probably going to be around 4,600 per show, according to Meltzer, by the time you take into account the last shows of the year. And they also ran less shows this year and did more super shows. Despite all this talk of the draft split, there was a lot of super shows this year, and that trend is going to continue next year. Bobby Lincoln on here says 1994 was better than 2019 in WWE, in his opinion. And yes, I'll agree with that. Jeremy Barber says, when did I ever get a WWE tryout? I had 14 total WWE tryouts. I was signed from one of them in 2009. And I actually had 2 TV matches with WWE as well. Ring of Honor finished 2019 with a total of 45,479 fans attending their events, which is an average of 1,082 per show. However, in the later months of Ring of Honor, their average has gone way down. MLW average 1,457 fans per event, which is pretty good. But you have to take into consideration they're only running one event per month. But that's not bad at all. New Japan averaged 2,698 fans per event in Japan. And in the US, they averaged 2,648 fans per event. Now, they're going to be running a lot more American shows in the US in 2020, I think around 30. So they're going to have a hard time keeping that same average, running 30 shows. There was no average attendance for Impact given. They don't really release their attendance. They also have moved off the Pursuit channel, where reportedly Most of the time, they were only doing around 10,000 viewers. They have not released any numbers for how many people are watching their show on Access TV. Apparently, New Japan is still on Access TV, but since Impact's been on there, they're advertising New Japan a lot less. Bobby Lincoln says, did AEW get a hold of me, Hannibal? No, they didn't, despite Billy Graham recommending me to them. But as I've said here, the way AEW is going creatively, I would not want to wrestle in AEW. The only two companies I would want to wrestle for outside of Great North Wrestling, which I'm not even wrestling for now, I'm just producing, would be Ring of Honor or MLW. From what I've seen of those products. Michael McDonald says house shows never count. Well, house shows do count. They're a serious part of the revenue, and they actually lost money for WWE last quarter. If a portion of your revenue for your company is losing money, of course it counts. To say that house shows never count is idiotic. That's like the people that say TV ratings don't count, where if you look at where all WWE's money is coming from, the majority of their money is coming from TV networks paying them. They have a deal with Fox supposedly worth over $300 million over 5 years. So if they don't produce ratings and in the future those TV contracts go, they're also a very vital part. As far as PWG, for those that follow PWG, their last show or two hasn't sold out. So that's not good for PWG, which regularly sells out. As far as the SmackDown tapings, last Friday, December 20th, at the Barclays Center, they did draw 10,000 fans to that show, which is a very good number for them. It was noted that the NXT show that aired Christmas, they taped 3 matches for the NXT taping after the SmackDown, and lots of the crowd left for the NXT tapings. It was also noted in the Wrestling Observer this week that since NXT has been on network TV, their attendance has actually gone down. Raw, as I already reported in an individual video, drew their second lowest number in the company's history. And the last time they had a Raw on the Monday of a Christmas week was 6 years ago. And that number was literally double the number that they had this week. And the only show in history that of Raw that drew a lower rating than this past Monday's rating was a Christmas Eve Raw that aired in the mid-90s. Okay, Michael McDonald's correcting himself. He says for house shows, he means storylines. Storylines are not as important on house shows. Well, apparently, I believe a title changed last night at the Madison Square Garden house show, but that was a unique house show. The U.S. title changed hands. Someone who I didn't recognize the name won it. Anthony Shabbat confirms that. If you want to say who won the title, write down the name. I forget. Another Anthony says Ryback equals Goldberg. I don't think so. Ryback didn't draw anywhere near the numbers Goldberg did. Ryback, from what I saw of him, was not very impressive at all. And Goldberg has proven when he comes back, ratings go up. If Ryback was all that good, what has he done in wrestling since he left WWE? Have we heard anything from him? I don't know. I mean, when Cody Rhodes left WWE, he was packing houses on the independent scene. I haven't seen any of that from Ryback. With no competition from AEW on Christmas, NXT actually had 831,000 viewers on Christmas, which was up 5% from the previous week. So they only had 5% more viewers with AEW not competing with them. The exact rating, let's see what it was. I'll write it in the description. I think I forgot to write it down, but the exact rating was a 0.4. I think it was around a 0.4 something. So it wasn't a great rating, but it was also under 1 million viewers for NXT Christmas's episode. As far as WWE Backstage, it drew a 0.05 rating on Tuesday and averaged 153,000 viewers, which is actually more viewers than the last time they had CM Punk on. So CM Punk has not really shown that he makes much of a difference for WWE Backstage. Also in WWE news, Roman Reigns is going to be doing a match as part of Fox's New Year's Eve special. Fandango, who's 38, suffered an elbow injury on December 11th and is going to be out of action for a while. Dave Meltzer says he thinks WWE is going to continue cutting back on house shows since they're a money loser for the company. Steve Austin appeared in a music video from Puerto Rican rapper Bad Bunny. Apparently, there's talk of LA hosting next year's WrestleMania. WWE would rather have it there in 2022, but the Los Angeles people actually would prefer to have it there next year since the Super Bowl is coming to LA in 2022. Okay, the wrestler who won the U.S. title is Andrade. In AEW news, they had no shows this week. They're on Christmas holidays. We've already talked about this. There was a big social media backlash for Tony Khan giving Shawn Spears a stunner. And then the referee also gave Christopher Daniels, who's one of their heavyweight champions, stunner, a female referee. Dave Meltzer says this plays into the stigma that AEW's business is all about a vanity project because Tony Khan likes hanging around wrestlers. The excuse AEW's given is they didn't air that on TV, but there was 3,100 fans reportedly in the arena, and those videos were all over social media. So to say that it doesn't matter if you do something in an arena when the TV camera's off with how big social media is these days is just crazy. And personally, for me, that completely turned me off of AEW. Having Tony Khan and the woman referee beat up one of their main heels, to me, that just shows you what a joke of the company that is. Randy Orton, I guess, was upset over the Dark Order video of the Dark Order missing Dustin Rhodes with punches by like 6 inches, and Dustin was still selling the punches. Apparently, Randy Orton tweeted this about that situation. Quote, he apparently is a seasoned vet and is used to live TV and just assumed that the camera to his left was the one with that red dot thingy on it for those horrendous fucking punches. Hashtag work on your punches, kid, or quit the business. You're the drizzling shits. So that's what Randy Orton has to say about the Dark Order guy. All of the Dark Order guys suck, in my opinion. Kevin Nash pulled out of the Chris Jericho cruise, as I already reported, to appear in an Alec Baldwin film. I said his name was Alex Baldwin. Sorry, I'm not that familiar with the actor, other than the Baldwin name I know is a famous name. And apparently this is a big deal for Nash, who I have wrestled. That match is part of the Best of Hannibal DVD, which we sold all of the we released it in 2018. I had a bunch of copies made, which we sold at Great North Wrestling events. Now that I'm not wrestling on Great North Wrestling events anymore, I didn't feel like having more copies made. So I just put the whole 3-hour DVD out on YouTube last night. Abdullah the Butcher's in it, Terry Funk, AJ Styles, Psycho Sid, Gangrel, Scorpio, Superstar Billy Graham, Ring of Honor champion PCO, and a lot more. Check that out here on the Hannibal TV, the best of Hannibal. In other news, Rip Oliver, who is actually scheduled to be appearing with Billy Jack Haynes at WrestleCon for the Hannibal TV in Tampa, April 2nd and 3rd. Unfortunately, and I heard this was reported in the Observer, but I checked with Billy Jack Haynes and I found out exactly what's wrong with him. He's 67 years old, Rip Oliver, and unfortunately, he is in a critical condition right now in the hospital in Homosassa, Florida. Unfortunately, he's suffering from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and compressive heart failure. So I'm praying for you, man. I hope you pull through. Billy Jack Haynes is saying he's a tough guy. He thinks he can pull through. If you don't know who Rip Oliver is, he wrestled from 76 to 91, was mainly known for his time in the Pacific Northwest, where he had 12 heavyweight title reigns. He also appeared in the WWE, and unfortunately, they used him mostly as enhancement talent in the WWE. MC says, I can see Marty Squirrel, I guess his name is, showing up in AEW in 2020. Well, he has at least one more Ring of Honor appearance in January for a show, I believe in North Carolina, I believe. It's unknown if he's re-signed another contract, but he is also wrestling for NWA. So at least in the meantime, he's not appearing for AEW. According to Dave Meltzer, Squirrel, what a stupid last name, sorry, buddy. He has not re-signed with Ring of Honor, but he was made a good offer to re-sign. He still could re-sign. Apparently, it's unknown what kind of deal he has with the NWA. Also in NWA news, speaking in NWA, they have not released the pay-per-view numbers for their pay-per-view that they had this month. That's usually not a good sign when you don't release your pay-per-view numbers. They're bragging that they sold 250 tickets for their Hard Times pay-per-view, and for their tapings and the 2 days after that, also in the 250 seat building, there is still tickets available. So everyone's saying Nick Aldis is such a great draw, plus all the other guys in NWA. I mean, the Rock and Roll Express are legends. I have nothing but respect for them. But you have other people in NWA whose names don't even come to me, but some quasi-famous wrestler. James Storms is a good guy. But just to show you how hard it is to sell tickets in wrestling these days, there's still tickets available for the next 2 nights after their pay-per-view. And the place only holds 250 people. So everyone thinking that NWA is such a great place. Billy Corgan's a multimillionaire. He's funding this himself. Their show is on YouTube. It's not on television. It gets usually under 200,000 viewers, which might equal about $50 in YouTube revenue, which might pay for one jobber on that show. So yeah, they're not exactly rolling in money. I love how I have haters that watch these. This guy says he bet he could knock me out in a fight. Well, it's funny because whenever I go around in public, nobody ever challenges me other than when I was a bouncer. And honestly, I'm not one to say that I've never actually been knocked out. from a fight. I have a very strong neck from all my days wrestling. And you know what? Talk is cheap. Talk is very cheap. And if you hate me so much, for all you haters out there, why do you watch all my videos? In MMA news, the Korean Zombie was victorious, knocking out Frankie Edgar at 318 in the main event of UFC from South Korea. The show had 10,651 fans with no financial gate announced. According to Dana White, UFC 246, Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone, January 18th, sold out the very first day. Tickets were put on sale with a $10 million gate, which is one of the largest gates in the history of the company. Sean Scott says, Hannibal, I love your channel, sir. Suck It Trudeau says, what's the deal with Jinder Mahal? Jinder Mahal, former Great North Wrestling wrestler. If you search Jinder Mahal, the Hannibal TV, there's a lot of videos on here on him. He had some sort of injury. I forget what it is exactly, but he's still recovering from that injury. Now, according to John Jones, he's thinking of moving up to heavyweight to challenge Stipe Miocic. Dave Meltzer has released more information about former Puerto Rican wrestling star Apollo Germán Figueroa. I don't speak Spanish. Who's making his MMA debut at Combate America's January 25th show in San Juan against an 0-3 wrestler or an 0-3 fighter, John Calloway. He was a big star in Puerto Rico. He did sign briefly with WWE in 2007, and he was in TNA for a long time. It's unknown if he's actually been training in MMA. This is a big show for them in Puerto Rico for Combate Americas. That's probably why they have him on it. But I never knew him to be a fighter, so I find it very interesting that he's on that show. I will be watching that one for sure. I used to be somewhat friends with him in Puerto Rico. I once let him fuck a girl on my bed. That's how close friends I was with him. Drinking out of my Popeyes cup here. By the way, if anyone ever wants to sponsor me supplements, email greatnorthwrestling@gmail.com. How long has Dave Meltzer been doing the Wrestling Observer? Someone's asking me. Your mom's woven nest. I don't know. I think since around 1988 or so, possibly. Actually, probably longer than that because I know Bruiser Brody helped him. And Brody died in 88, so at least before 88. Sebastian L. GNW went to Drummondville. Will you come to Sherbrooke someday? Actually, Great North Wrestling never went to Drummondville. We've only ever been to Montreal, which is an oversaturated market. Will we ever go to other towns in Quebec? I have looked into it. We might. Faza Refix, isn't Jinder Mahal a former WWE world champion? Yes. Is Ibzan Arayo? Can I do an interview with Rick Martel? I have talked to Rick Martel like ever since I started this channel. He only lives about a 4-hour drive from me. Trying to get a shoot interview with him. He was putting it off until finally this year he got back to me and he says he doesn't like the wrestling business anymore. Surprise, surprise. And he no longer wants anything to do with the wrestling business, shoot interviews or otherwise. So unfortunately, no, there's not going to be a Rick Martel shoot interview unless he changes his mind. Some troll is asking me how many benzos am I on. I don't even know what a benzo is. I haven't worked out today. I'm reading papers, giving news, talking. If these fucking assholes have a problem with me, don't watch. So on that note, have a great December 27th, everybody. See you later.